Apologize for tardiness. Tonight's meeting is the ad hoc committee is a charter revision commission possibly. On the committee members, myself is Charlie Trombetta, I'll be the chairperson, Colleen Stanley, Paul Rotello, also Les Pinner here, Corporation Counsel. We also have in attendance, let's see, Ben Chianese, Warren Levy, Colleen, Jane Diggs, and of course, Dwayne Perkins, anyone else, Mayor, Honorable Mayor Mark.
Pauline.
Oh, Pauline, I'm sorry, I thought you left.
I thought you mentioned me.
I thought I did too. Again, this is an ad hoc to consider a possible commission to review our charter and make any recommendations for possible change. Mayor, can you enlighten us on a little bit of this is a letter?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. We are looking to embark on the charter revision process, and I think in my letter I've articulated just some quick brush strokes of why I think we should do this, but there are obviously a lot of reasons why we ought to take our time and go through various pieces of the charter. I'm recommending a complete top-to-bottom review of it, and recommendations for changes would be available for the 2008 elections. That will give us a nice 16 months, 17 months for people to work on this. The commission, there might be some misconception, just to kind of outline the broad strokes of the process, and Attorney Pinner's here with more specific details, but basically the council's responsibility would be to adopt the resolution and then adopt a resolution which would name the members of the commission. Right now, our recommendation at this meeting would be to get sort of an overview of what the process is, then perhaps reconvene, adopt the resolution, put that on the council agenda, and then we would go forward and form a commission. Basically, I'm recommending a 9-member commission to do the charter revision. Our recommendation was 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats, and 3 unaffiliated, so it's evenly dispersed, and no one particular organization or group would control the outcome of the process. I think it's important that it be transparent, that it be clean, and that people really believe in the things that the commission comes out. The council's responsibility is to appoint the commission and then let them go do their homework and come back and report back to the council. There's a public hearing process that's set up in there. There's public participation, public input. It's very much a transparent process. And then the recommendations go before the council. The council will then make a determination about whether they want to adopt all the recommendations, some of the recommendations, and of course then they would vote to move forward and put it on the ballot for adoption or rejection by the voters. We haven't done this wide net of a revision, I don't think, since 1977. And that's really what we're looking for. We've done very targeted things in the past. We're not looking at ripping apart our government because it works pretty good, but there are just a lot of pieces that need to be looked at. So it would be comprehensive in the approach of doing that. The council can make recommendations to the commission as individual council members. I'm going to certainly assemble a series of recommendations that I would present to the commission, which I'm going to glean from our department heads, city staff, and folks that have to work within the confines of the charter. And then it's up to the commission to go and do the work and to listen to, and also the public can make recommendations at the public hearing portions. And they take public input. I'd also recommend, once we get rolling on this, that the commission, we would give them a site on the website so they could take recommendations through the web to consider, and that we would be able to get as much input from the public as we can. So, in general, that's how the process works. Attorney Pinter has some more specific details. I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, if you want him to go through those or not.
Yeah, I just, one quick question. For the commission would be set up, it would be approved, the commission would be approved by the council, and the details about what the charter, what questions about the charter or possible changes will come from the website.
I would
Any-
start with a list of recommendations of things, of challenges that we see with the charter. E.g., our borrowing limits were set in 1977. They're extremely low. We can only borrow $500,000 without going to the voters. You can't pay more than maybe 3 streets, and not to mention do the drainage work you want to do and everything else. So I would recommend raising the borrowing limits. Our plan of development says that we should have a combined planning and zoning commission. I would recommend that we do that, and that we make that position an elected position, so it's responsive to the voters. There's a whole series of financial issues that the finance department wants looked at in terms of the mechanics of the way we do things. I have issues with job titles that are antiquated and out of date. So there's a whole bunch of things that can be done in there, and I'll present a list, which obviously I'll CC the council on, of just, hey, look, here's some starting points, look at it, throw it out, do whatever you want. It's important to note that the commission can consider anything and all things that come before it. It's not limited to any recommendations that are made by the public, the council, the mayor's office. They can really kick around anything they want in terms of how they want their government to operate. So in this process, there's a lot of ups and downs, because they'll float one idea, they'll kick it around, we don't want to do that. So people tend to get a little bit worked up about it. But that's how you come up with a really clean set of recommendations at the end, by brainstorming and coming up with ideas. And that's really basically how the commission would gather its information. Once the council sets this up, they just basically wind up the commission, point them in the right direction, and say report back to us. I think there's a timeline in this that they have to report back.
Less than possible on that,
Sure. With permission of the chair, I had, I'll just pass it down to the chair and distribute it to Charlie. I have a few more copies. The mayor has fairly accurately surrounded the parameters of the process. What I'm handing out to you, or you're handing out to the group, Mr. Chairman, is really a short format, first meeting summary for you, and frankly for all of us, to try to make the early part of this process as simple and straightforward as possible. I have a few more. As you can, and Charlie, if you permit, it's fairly short, so I'd like to just quickly go through each step. We're really at the end of step 2 at this point for tonight. Step 3, 4, 5 are subsequent. Step 1 is the May 1st action of the council to receive the mayor's request to establish a charter revision commission. That's according to the statute section, and each of these has a statute section attached to it. The process is very, very statutory specific. It has steps to it. They're very carefully crafted. The charter is the organic law of any municipality, and the statutes, the intent of the statutes is to go about the process very carefully. The mayor's letter, the request to consider the adoption of a charter revision commission, was sent to this committee in May. Step 2 is this committee tonight, June 19th. The committee is charged to discuss the mayor's request. In the mayor's letter, in the 5th paragraph, the charge of the committee will be to review the proposed resolution and bring back a recommendation to the whole council at the June meeting. And the resolution that was attached to the mayor's letter and was on the May council agenda is that he is supposed to recommend to the full council a resolution that would begin the process. So we're actually before the process, if you will. What the Common Council would do at its next meeting, whenever the recommendation of your committee goes back to the council, is that the resolution would be adopted to establish 3 or 4 things. Basically, designation of the members of the commission, identification of the issues that the Common Council considers appropriate for consideration in the revision process. Thirdly, the establishment of a general timeline for the revision process. And finally, a deadline for the submission of a draft report. It's far more detailed than that, but in large part. And you'll see in step 2, I identified the 4 items that were the council to authorize by 2/3 vote, which is required by statute, the formation of a charter revision commission. Those 4 goals would be in that resolution and would be approved by the Common Council. Step 3, July 3rd, if that's the date that this goes back to the Common Council, the Council receives your committee's report and adopts resolution number 1. And again, resolution number 1 identifies the 4 factors that I mentioned before. Step 4 is a 30-day hence process, meaning 30 days after July 3rd, whatever the date is, this goes back. The Common Council adopts resolution number 2, which is really the meat of the process, the beginning of the process, and that's when the Common Council will make the decision on the membership. The mayor's indicated 9 members. The Common Council would approve that, and the members, each member, and the other 3 factors as well would be specifically approved in the resolution and identified by the council. Step 5 is the beginning of the commission's process, once the commission is formed, and from there it goes into a series of very, not complex necessarily, but somewhat time-sensitive meeting schedules, public hearing schedules, reporting schedules, draft report schedules, and such matters. And I've also asterisked at the bottom several important things that the commission, CRC is the Charter Revision Commission, the draft report has to be submitted to the council not later than 16 months from the date the commission was appointed. Secondly, the Common Council, in addition to the public hearings that the commission has to hold, the Common Council has to hold at least 1 public hearing as well. Third asterisk is not later than 30 days after the final Common Council approval of the Commission's report. The draft charter has to be published. At that point, it's not a draft, it's more or less a final draft, if you will. And finally, the Council will then decide whether the charter revision is placed before the voters at a regular or a special election. That's the choice that you have. Finally, at the very bottom, you'll see that in order to accommodate getting this on the election schedule for November 2008, the time frames could be shortened. You're not really restricted. You can make it longer if for some reason that's desired, but you can also make it shorter, depending upon how the commission squeezes its ability to do the work and provide the draft report to the council. So tonight, what you're here to do is to see if you want to recommend to the council the initiation of the formation of the charter revision process.
Thank you. Committee members?
Yeah, through the chair to Les, you mentioned they could be lengthened or shortened. I think what you meant was they want to be shortened because we've got that 16-month period between the time we create this in July and the time that we have it.
With respect to that particular matter, correct. That's a 16-month process. You have to provide the draft report within that process, correct.
That will cover the election in November?
If it's within 16 months, it could cover it. You could reach the November.
We've got August, September, October, November. Isn't that kind of cutting it a little fine?
November 08.
Right. Plus another 12 gives us 16. I mean,
It says within 16.
Within 16 months.
Now, it doesn't have to be 16.
It can't exceed.
Can't exceed
60
60
days.
well, yeah, so what I'm saying is, say that we approve this on July 3rd, the clock starts to tick, and I don't know when the November election is, but say it's November 9th. Is that too late, or do we still?
You can still do it, so long as the commission and the council act rapidly. Your time frame can be shortened, so long as, let's say, for example, that the second resolution...
I'm not saying short, I'm saying lengthen. Can we go beyond 16 months?
You can't go beyond 16
Okay, so
months
what- okay.
for the adoption of the draft report. That's
Okay, for the option of the
statutory.
draft report.
Right.
But we could put it in front of the voters in 20 months or something like that, correct?
We'll see how it goes. We'll
But I'm
see.
saying we've
Yeah.
got that authority to do that by the
Sure.
state.
Sure.
Yes.
The 16 months is only for the
For the
draft
draft
report.
report.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to miss the election window by like 48 hours, that's all. Okay, thank you.
list.
In 1977 was the last time that we had a charter revision committee, is that right?
I believe what the mayor suggested, 1977 was the last broad charter revision. There was a charter revision done in 1990. That's your last charter. It was selective. It wasn't a broad one. I think the mayor indicated at this time you would be more like a 1977 broader-based charter revision. The 1990 was one, but it was narrower.
Yeah, through the chair, there's probably less. We're all elected officials, and if we want to have a little input on the charter, I'm supposing it's going to be fairly easy to pick up the phone and talk to somebody. But let's talk about how the public can have some input. A guy from the north end of town, he doesn't really know anybody, but he's got a beef about something because he's read the charter on the web or whatever. How does he actually, I mean, you talked about websites and things like that, but how does the public actually participate?
Throughout the process?
Yeah.
Several ways. The first way, there's at least one public hearing that has to be held by the Charter Revision Commission at the outset of the process. They have to hold at least 2. The other one is during the process. They could hold 10 public hearings if they want to. So the public can attend the public hearings. The public can attend the Charter Revision Commission meetings. That's
Will
the
they
second
be,
way.
if I may, Charlie, will they be allowed to speak, or is that at the discretion of the chair?
Yes, that will be at the discretion of the chair.
So that if the chair wants, he doesn't have to let him or she.
Correct.
I think to the chair, I think at any time, the chair can accept recommendations from members of the public. So I think even if the chair wanted to set up the first 20 minutes of each meeting, much like we do with the council, you could do that. It might be a little inefficient, and would be very inefficient when people would just, they come by and say, hey, Paul, make common council's term 4 years, I think the response should be, hey, great idea, can you put it in writing to us with your name and address, and I'll bring it over to the commission and they'll consider it. They're not limited in what they consider. They can consider all and any ideas that come before them. Doesn't mean they'll necessarily adopt them, but they can certainly kick them around and see if it makes sense and see what other communities do. So I would think that one prerequisite would be to at least be in writing to formalize, and then we'd have a record to it.
Further, you have the series of public hearings, the number of which the commission will decide, the Charter Revision Commission. They have to have one at the outset and one before the draft report is submitted. Then the Common Council has a chance at it. They have public hearings, at least one public hearing. So you have that process. Perhaps it could be a committee of the council at that point. You have additional avenues there. Obviously, constituents can contact council members individually as well as we do now. So we have a number of opportunities along the way. People, of course, contact the mayor as well, indicate, some preferences or thoughts. So there's a number of ways that contact can be made. And it's along in a process where, frankly, there are a number of opportunities for people to weigh in the public.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Again, through the chair to either to Les or to the mayor, whoever can answer it. So my understanding of what's happening here, it would be the goal of this commission to get a report to the next council meeting, July 3rd. And this commission is going to say, for example, we want 9 members. We have to identify the issues and establish the timetables, the 1 to 16 months. That is what's going to be at this commission for the next meeting.
No, this is just
There's 2 resolutions that have to be adopted by the council. The first one sets the process in motion. That's what we're discussing tonight. The second resolution is one that names the members of the commission, and that has to be done within 30 days of the vote of setting the process in motion. So you're just considering the first resolution.
So basically to establish a charter
Revision.
revision. So basically the motion would be just to establish,
Adopt the resolution.
adopt the resolution for a charter. So it's simple as that.
And if I may, I believe the function of this ad hoc expires at that point, correct?
Yeah.
We are not a charter revision
Oh, no,
commission
no, no.
here. We're just an ad
No, what
hoc
would happen
considering
is-
whether we should do this.
That's
And if the
right.
council decides to do that, we've done our job, and then it's off the races with the charter revision, however that's going to shake out. Can we make a within the confines of the motion, could we make a motion that stipulated a 9-member charter revision committee with people coming from equal sides of the political spectrum and all those kinds of things? Or is that, are we limited by state statute? Do we want to do that?
You could not do that at this stage.
We can't do that.
No, because the charge of this committee is narrow. What's going back to the common council with this recommendation is, step one is the establishment of the process. Okay, so you're not even really establishing the committee.
No,
You're establishing the process by 2/3 vote of the council. Second step would be then to consider the membership and those other factors, and that's your resolution number 2.
Our responsibility is timetable.
Those 4 factors in step 2.
Would that be a different ad hoc committee to do that?
Well, you've got a narrow timetable of 30 days to do all that, so probably not. I mean, you would effectively not have an ad hoc, unless you could finish the work within 30 days and then reconvene a common council meeting and adopt the recommendations of the ad hoc. It's kind of tough to do.
You could have this.
It could work that way, it's possible. I mean, we're kind of going to wrestle around with that once we get the first resolution adopted.
Through you to the Corporation Council, or maybe even the American Masters. What would be the selection process for the council to select those 9 members?
Those appointments are made by the common council, by its statute. My suggestion would be to the council president that he would solicit recommendations from both the Republican Town Committee, Democratic Town Committee, and then put out a public call for unaffiliated or /independent voters that would be willing to participate. It is intensive, and you got to really be wanting to put time into doing this. I'm not telling you no, but I'm just saying it's a big commitment because you spend, you're talking about giving up 16 months of your life, and you got to meet once every couple of weeks or once a month at least to really get some good work done. I've asked Attorney Gatchak to serve as counsel since he was around for the last. Actually, he wasn't around. We hired him a couple of years after that, but he's worked with the last charter and he's a good authority. And I think you'll have a lot of institutional knowledge to help us.
Thank you.
Pushed up the boundaries of our committee, so we're basically just here as ready to send this to the corporation, to the common council, possibly setting up a commission.
Who could then accept our recommendations?
The council.
I mean, we could vote this down tonight, and they could not accept that recommendation. We could vote it up and they could not accept it. It's accepted. All we're doing is we're saying, well, we took a look, this is probably either a good idea or not.
Yes.
So this is why.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, that's why I wanted to go to ad hoc, just so people can start getting comfortable with process and so people stop in the street and we can start really talking about this in a very transparent way and people know what's happening.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
No.
Les, could you just briefly talk about the importance of the charter? Because to me, I compare our charter with the state or a federal constitution, but I know it's not that complicated, and it's not, because we also have all these other ordinances that do other things too, and we don't really have the same sort of separations that different branches of government at the state and federal level have. But it is pretty important for Danbury, though, isn't it?
Well, the only reason that any municipality in the state of Connecticut exists and can function is because the state has granted it the right to do so, and that's home rule. And in Danbury, the charter is the home rule allowance, if you will. That's your, and I do call it the Constitution because that's your organic law that establishes in a way that's very difficult to change.
Organic means?
Organic means baseline, fundamental law, fundamental precepts of government operation. So the state permits Danbury to operate by charter. It permits, and this is the process that's here, the state also permits Danbury to amend its charter. They've developed a process so that it's not done very easily. It's not done in a way that subverts the intent, which is that municipalities do it right and use that organic law properly. So that's the process that you'd be embarking upon now. Once the commission reports out, the council accepts the charter revisions and votes.
With a 2/3 vote again?
No, the 2/3 vote is at the beginning. The 2/3 vote.
Accept the recommendations of the commissions, 2/3 too.
I believe it's a majority, Mayor, but I believe so. But the critical factor is that the voters have added, and that's what the state really wants, which is make sure the voters accept the recommendations of the...
And they've rejected charter revisions in the past. So they're very savvy about knowing what's on the ballot. And they know what to do.
Is there if I may, is there a process, and let me know if this is not, should not be really considered part of this ad hoc committee, but is there a process whereby, as an institutional voice, if the council accepts the recommendations for the charter and the city decides officially to go through to present it in front of the voters, and there is a concerted effort by outside forces to knock it down, is there a provision where the city can spend funds advertising for it or advocating for it? Can they do that, take ads out of things like that? Okay, good. I wouldn't want there to be, but I was just wondering if the deck would be sort of stacked by, okay.
Absolutely.
So we put it in front of the voters, and if we're in favor of it, we talk to them. If we're not, we talk to them. But we can't take ads out on LED or the paper and spend thousands of dollars to beat back a grassroots brush fund. Thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you.
I think it's something that we definitely really need to do. So at this moment, I would like to make a motion to recommend at our next common council meeting to adopt a resolution to establish a charter revision commission, which will review the charter and make any recommendations needed. Do we need to add anything to that?
If you would, Colleen, maybe state that you'd be recommending the establishment of the charter revision process, as opposed to a commission.
Establish a,
The charter revision process in accordance with the resolution.
adopt a resolution to establish a charter revision
Process.
Process.
Right.
Process. To make recommendation? I'm sorry, what did you say?
If you stop the process, that would be fine. You can say in accordance with state law.
And of course.
That will allow you to follow the state statutes.
So I recommend at the next common council meeting to adopt a resolution to establish a charter revision process in accordance with law.
State law.
State law.
That it?
Yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimously. Motion adjourned.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved, second. Aye.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
This committee, we have Colleen Stanley and we have Dwayne Perkins, our member of the committee. We also have here with us Ben Chinisi, Councilman Tom Sadi, Councilwoman Jane Diggs, and Corporation Counsel. Now, the charge of this committee is to review the report from Eric Gottschalk stipulating that we have nothing to do with this. It has to do with the state of Connecticut has laws, and we cannot change the state has to change the laws, and that's what the charge of this committee is, about the cell phone drivers' privileges. Les, do you want to go over this a little bit, or
Do you have the letter?
do you have the letter?
I do.
Okay. And
And that's
tell us.
actually his, the ordinance reports.
I have that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney Gottschalk was asked to review this request and submitted a memo or a letter to the council on March 27th this year. In essence, and I'll spend just enough time, it's just questions to advise you that what he's basically saying here is that there's a legal doctrine of preemption that provides where superseding state or federal law exists, that local enactments should not be produced and enacted in the face of that, because the state, in this case, has already apparently preempted the field by passing legislation regarding school buses and vehicles generally, and addressing the issue of cell phones, handheld cell phones, mobile telephones, or those with hand-free accessories. When Rick reviewed this, he reviewed it in light of Paul and Tom and Ben's letter, which basically asked the question whether there's a way to increase the safety of students, where you have bus drivers, specifically I think that was the request, where they have bus drivers or other buses, schools and otherwise, who, the drivers of which would be using handheld or hands-free devices while they were driving the vehicle. The first thing we did was we checked with Laidlaw, which is the school's bus operator. We also checked with HART. Each of those entities has prohibitions, either by contract or by policy, to forbid bus drivers, except in case of emergencies, from using cell phone devices. In addition, state law is where the preemption issue comes in. State law provides that, and I won't quote the whole section, but provides in essence that a moving school bus the driver should not use a handheld mobile telephone or other electronic device, including those with hands-free accessories, while that bus is driving passengers, unless there's an emergency. So there you have the basic rule that exists, that where the state law that seems to want to control the area, the preemption policy or law provides that the locality should not do something that contravenes that. So Rick is suggesting to you that if there's to be any additional strengthening of the prohibition, that strengthening be done by request to the state legislature, because the state has addressed this issue already. That's the summary.
Colin, you have something also?
Yeah, no, I just also make phone calls, and I have Laidlaw.
Laidlaw, yeah.
Laidlaw already has a law stipulating that a bus driver cannot use a cell phone unless it's an absolute emergency. And and I've talked to 2 or 3 of the bus drivers, and they informed me that they are not allowed to use the phone unless it's a dire emergency and they are to pull to the side of the road, and only then are they supposed to be. What this all boils down to is the police or somebody enforcing these laws. If someone sees someone on the cell phone, I had a woman one day who, I saw a bus driver, and I did call, I got the bus number, and I called the bus company immediately, and I informed them that she was driving, But this is how it has to be. It has to be through enforcement. And I don't think there's anything that we really can do.
And through the chair.
Go ahead.
Also, it's not only just the handheld devices, it also includes radios, cassettes, CD players, MP3 players, not just phones or cell phones. It's any kind of audio, anything that goes in their ear, they say. They're not supposed to use them, so, I mean, there's already a law in place. I don't think there's anything further that needs to be done, other than enforcement of what's there.
Anybody have any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Tom.
Through the Chair of the Corporation Council, with regard to Laidlaw and Hart, that is a policy that employees are subject to through their private arrangements with a private company. Is that correct? And does that policy have a penalty? And what is the penalty? And then secondly, with regard to state law, again, what is the penalty that's in place for violation of the statute?
Laidlaw, with respect to the first question, Tom, Laidlaw would enforce its policy through employment enforcement, generally, such as suspensions, termination, or other ways that a company would typically have to address its employees who don't follow the standards they have. With respect to the state restrictions, there are fines that would be imposed through summonses by the police department to enforce a violation of state law.
Do you know what the fines are? If not, you just cite the...
It's, the fines are $100, unless it's been changed very, very recently, $100 for a violation of the statute.
If I may follow up, Madam Chair, while not a member of the committee, but among the petitioning parties for this ad hoc, notwithstanding the fact that we can't necessarily put any laws in place at this level, we as a council have made recommendations in the past, and in fact, Councilwoman Basto had at one time proposed a municipal approach to handheld cell phones in motor vehicles before the state passed a hands-free law, and we were told about some of the preemption issues. But that doesn't preempt us as a council or as an ad hoc committee, you as an ad hoc committee, from making recommendations at the Common Council, either by resolution or by letter, which we've done in the past to our legislative delegation, ask them to increase the penalties. And I'll tell you why I think the penalties, and I think along lines with what Councilman Rotello was getting at here, is that, yes, there are penalties in place and there are fines, and more often than not, it seems they're issued to motor vehicle drivers, passenger vehicles, rather than buses. But a bus driver, like an airplane pilot or a train, or someone driving a train, has many other lives on their hands, not just the ones normally in a small vehicle, but dozens of children oftentimes and passengers. So therefore, it would seem that if these fines at the state level are not higher than those for a motor vehicle driver, maybe that would be the approach to take, to contact our legislative delegation, that we'd like to see an increase in the fines on bus drivers in particular, because, you know, in all honesty, we do have greater restrictions and requirements on people who drive buses and people who drive cars, because they have more lives in their hand. You have to have a CDL or other requirements when you drive trucks and buses. So that may be a way to address the issue while not overstepping our legal authority. And I would defer to also the Councilman Rotello, who really brought this issue forward.
Through the chair to Corporation Council, is $100 the highest amount of a fine that the council can?
At this time it is,
Right.
without the change in the state laws, Councilman Summers.
Well, if I may follow up though, my recommendation is not that the council do it, but that we ask our legislators to increase at the state level. Because as Corporation Council said, municipalities for health, safety, and welfare cannot issue a fine of more than $100 per violation.
Right.
So I understand that. It's more, tell our state legislators, we've done that many times in the past with regard to veterans benefits, with
Right.
regard to other issues where the city was sort of hamstrung by state law. We've asked them to increase the fines at the state level.
As a matter of fact, if the council chooses to make a motion that we write a letter and there is something up in Hartford, I will gladly go up there and speak for it, because in fact, to me, this is so important, because $100 doesn't seem to be much, but it's really enforcement, and what we have to do is we have to be really on the ball. If we see somebody with a cell phone, pull your car over and use your own cell phone and call Laidlaw and tell them exactly which bus it was, or wait till you get to work and tell them where it was and how it was, or something else, because you've got 30, 40...
Cell phone when you're driving.
Do not use your own cell phone, trust me, while you're driving. That's, I mean, Tommy knows how adamant I am against this. Pull over and do it. But, I mean, you've got 25, 30, 40 kids on that school bus. You've got an awful lot of lives in danger when you do have something like that. But like I say, they do have a law, and it's for us to help them enforce the law, because there's nobody else that's on the bus. It's us as citizens who see these things happen, and we've got to be diligent and say, hey, look, bus and so-and-so was walking on a cell phone. I don't know how important it was, but, you know, I think that's what we're going to have. Anybody else got any other questions? Mr. Chinese.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Again, I'm going to echo a little bit on Councilman Sadi's recommendation that we also try to write a letter to our state representatives asking them to possibly increase the fines. We've all seen it. There was an article in Monday's paper, I think we all read it, about cell phone distractions.
Another one today.
Another one today. There was multiple studies done on the distractions, not just cell phones, but radios, eating, shaving. There's so much out there. And I think as a council, I think we need to take a proactive approach on this issue. And I would recommend that at the committee, that you, at the council as a whole, that we take a proactive approach and that we write a letter requesting that the cell phone fines be increased as well.
Wayne, do you have any questions?
If I can make a comment, the original charge, the original petition for ad hoc asked the city to look at this issue in one of two ways, either through ordinance or through contract negotiations. And we received our report back. It didn't go to ad hoc, it's not the 30-day report, and we're now talking about the 30-day report that Eric Gottschalk just delivered. And with all due respect to Corporation Counsel, that's, as Les said, a suggestion or an opinion. And I have issues on both sides of Les's opinion. On the first side, just to keep it simple. On the first side is the fact that Laidlaw is not the employer of record for the bus drivers. We actually are. We are hiring them to hire the bus drivers. And Laidlaw's employment restrictions can change over time. I think it would be a safer bet to have the city itself be the one with the contract restriction. That the city itself would have and this could be done through Corporation Counsel, the city itself would say, listen, whoever is driving our buses, whether it's Laidlaw today or Mackey tomorrow, bus drivers cannot use cell phones. And that doesn't require an ordinance, so that would not run afoul of any statutory issues the state might have. Having said that, I think you should know that the state statute that purportedly prevents the use of hands-free cell phones in school buses, the state statute, this is House Bill 6722, the state statute that purportedly prevents the use of hands-free cell phones in school buses was written in such a way that it actually doesn't. So the state statute that we are all quoting, saying, the state passed a law that says you can't use any type of a cell phone in a school bus, actually doesn't say that. I'll tell you what it says. It's a very brief thing in Section 2. Now, we know that the state already has a law that says you can't use a handheld cell phone in a car. That also applies to school buses and everything else. Section 2 of this new ordinance that only applies to school buses says that no person shall use a handheld mobile telephone or other electronic device, including those with hands-free accessories, while operating a moving school bus that is carrying passengers unless it's an emergency. So what they've got is a line in here that people are quoting, and I don't mean this body, but you'll see this in newspapers, and also you'll see it on the internet. It says Connecticut's got this statute that says you can't use hands-free phones. The only thing that you're prevented from using, and if some of you people remember these, are hands-free accessories. You wouldn't want to use one of these things in a school bus. You wouldn't want to use one of these things in a car. They're awkward.
It's in here.
They're not. I know, but we're talking about the statute. But we're talking about the statute. The statute does not prevent the use of these. These are hands-free telephones, totally hands-free. They're not accessorized to any other telephone, and there are also hands-free units that attach to a vehicle itself. OnStar is a good example of that. It's sort of built in. They have what's known as transportable ones that can clip on your visor. They're not hands-free accessories, they're hands-free phones. And the only thing the statute restricts in a school bus are phones, including those with hands-free accessories. The strange thing about this ordinance, the statute I should say, is that they actually define what a hands-free phone is, but then they don't regulate it. So, no, it's not regulated. Take a look. No person shall use a handheld mobile telephone, handheld, we know what that is, can't use one of these, or one with a hands-free accessory. They do not mention hands-free phone. It's not a hands-free accessory, remember. Handheld with an accessory. Hands-free is a different unit. It can be attached to your dashboard. You can be talking. The reason I bring this up is because...
Hands-free is hands-free, though, is that...
Right, but accessory...
You think there's a loophole in there
Yeah, accessory, sure, accessory.
You know why?
So if there's not an accessory and it's a...
Right, if it's a hands-free phone, just to
I don't
keep
understand.
this on point.
But I do believe that the hands-free phone just came available
Right.
after this was.
Right, exactly, so in
So
other
that's
words,
why
it's
there
not
has to be a
covered.
change
Right,
also
it's
to
not
that,
covered.
and the fine.
So this is my point. We don't have a statute right now that would, by statute, prevent a Connecticut bus driver from talking on a hands-free phone, not a handheld phone with an accessory, but a hands-free phone. Connecticut statute, not an employment contract. If Laidlaw changes their employment contract, we're not protected. All I'm saying is the city of Danbury should have somewhere a line in their body of ordinances that says if you are driving a school bus for Danbury, you cannot use a cell phone when you're driving. That's all we're saying. To make it really simple. You can't use a phone when you're driving. Any kind of phone.
Hands-free also. Right.
Right, but again, that's Laidlaw.
Tommy.
They could change that. So that's all my point is. I think that we should beef ours up a little bit, and I agree with Councilman Sadi's recommendation that we petition the state for a higher fine. But just keep in mind, right now, there is no statute, state statute, preventing the use of a hands-free phone like OnStar in a school bus by a school driver carrying kids. And all the studies are now saying that talking on a phone, even a hands-free phone, is the equivalent of drinking and nobody wants that.
Madam Chair, I don't disagree with Councilman Rotello. I think what it is just technology moves so quickly.
Exactly.
And so what the committee could consider is along with the recommendation of an increase in fine, is just updating the definition to include any, phone.
Audio device.
Right.
Just to update the definition, possibly more consistent with the way Laidlaw has it laid out, where it does include many other things for school bus drivers, just to tighten it up. Now, we know the legislature is only in special session now, generally to address the budget, so it might be some time, but it is something that the committee could recommend to the council to send a letter to our legislative delegation to ask for an updated, more technical definition, as well as increased fines on bus drivers for using these many new devices that are available.
Absolutely. Through the chair. To Corporation Council, I believe, can we ask Corporation Council to draft this letter?
You certainly can. I could be there.
But I'm not on this committee, but could I ask Corporation Council this?
Sure.
Is there something that we could do that would protect us and the people that we hire from using, regardless of what their particular employment contract is with a subcontractor, is there something that we could do that would just by statute or by ordinance protect the city?
Yeah, I heard what you said before, Paul. The school district, school system in the city hires Laidlaw. So the contract is executed by the city and this company. The contract provides, and I haven't seen the contract, I think it goes through the school board's council, but the contract presumably provides, as they would typically do, that Laidlaw is hired and is required to follow standards established in the market for this kind of business, as well as follow state, federal, local law. So what Laidlaw then is required to do is to be aware of the state law that does whatever level of prohibition it does, or restriction. Laidlaw also, and I can't tell whether this is a restriction that came about by request of the school system, but Laidlaw on its own perhaps adopted this policy. So the policy gets incorporated into the contract with the school system. So you have two methods of enforcement. You have Laidlaw doing it through its employment. If they violate that, then the city, through the school system, can, with another bidder, or claim a breach of contract or something like that. So you have that method, and then you have Laidlaw and the city having to abide by state law that exists. So those are the two methods that you have. Kind of long answer to the question, but that's the way we, as a city, have our rights, retain our rights. There's no really third way.
Thanks.
I would like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to authorize, or to recommend to the common council at our next meeting, to have Corporation Council draft a letter to send to our state rep to increase fines on bus drivers and any public transportation using handheld and/or hands-free devices, including any audio equipment that would distract and harm the people on their buses or what have you.
Do we have a second?
Increase fines.
Wait a minute.
And an increased fine, I said increased fines.
Okay.
State rep to increase fines on bus drivers or any public transportation using handheld and/or hands-free devices, including any audio equipment that may distract them.
What about updating
In the
the,
statute.
what about updating the definition of hands-free?
She said, well, I think it's corporation, I would like corporation counsel to incorporate that in his draft.
The intent of the committee is, I think, is clearly known, and the motion doesn't need to include the entire text of the letter. But I would ask indulgence through the chair if Corporation Counsel would just informally, send, possibly by email, a copy of a draft so that it is consistent with the committee members, so Committee Member Perkins and others could review it through the chair, just the Corporation Counsel.
You have a second?
That was a good motion, right?
I think it was a great motion.
That was a great motion. Believe me, that was a great motion.
If there's anything missing, I can read between the
We
lines.
got it.
Thanks a lot,
Greg.
Second.
We got a second? Okay. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against, which motion carries unanimously.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of adjournment?
Thank you for all
Aye.
your thoughts.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, committee.
King Basso, I'm the chair of this committee. We have Colleen Stanley and John Esposito, members of the committee. We also have Corporation Counsel Les Pinter, and we have Director of Public Works, Antonio Iadola. Did I say it right?
You did, yeah.
And we also have the petitioners, Mike Callis and Mike Callis. And, well, his brother-in-law.
Brian.
But Brian, what's Brian's last name?
Farrell.
Farrell.
Double R, double L.
Okay. Now, the charge of the committee was a letter that said Michael Hallis of Hallis Farms has a proposal to offer farming activity on some parcels of city-owned land. Hallis Farms is a family-owned business, blah, 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 blah. I'm ready to request an ad hoc committee to consider Hallis's farm proposal. Mark D. Boughton. What I would like to do, first of all, I would like to get Michael Hallis's proposal, what he would like to do with this land, and this is the land that is directly behind the buildings that he has the market on.
I'm on.
You're on.
Well, thank you for accepting my proposal to here tonight. But if you're all familiar with my piece of property, we own Hallis Farm Market, Route 37 in Danbury. To give us a little background, we were granted permission several years ago by the Common Council to beautify a piece of property on the corner of Barn Road and Route 37, Pembroke Road there. And we did a planting, with several trees and shrubs and maintain it weekly. And I'd like to continue that down the road a little bit. Does everybody have the map?
Yeah.
So everybody kind of knows where we're talking about here. I highlighted in green here the piece of property that is the piece of property that's in question right now. And in orange is our piece of property that we own. So, and you can see it has quite a bit of road frontage on Barnum Road.
This is, you already did this one.
No, no.
No.
This is our piece of property now.
Okay.
This is the piece of property right here that we beautified already.
Okay.
Down here.
Okay.
So when you turn on,
Okay.
okay, it's actually, this map is a little sketchy here, this piece of property right here. So what we'd like to do is kind of continue that same theme down into that piece of property and really make it a show piece. So it really has some curb appeal. Clear out a lot of the underbrush and some of the dead trees and unwanted trees there, and replace them with landscape type of trees, bushes, shrubs, and maintain on a regular basis. And I mean that's clearly what it is, because it is, as far as I'm concerned, more or less an eyesore. just...
What are we talking about? I'm not following
Okay,
you too closely.
here's the prison.
Okay, yeah.
Here's Route 37 here.
Well, let's go from the piece that you already did.
Okay, this is the piece you turn
Yeah.
onto Barn Road right
Okay.
here. Okay,
Yeah,
this
that's
is
the
Route
piece.
37 here.
That's the one you already did.
Okay, so now,
Where
we
am I going?
own, this is the stone wall that we still have to rebuild right here, which that's in works also. We just gotta engineer the right wall so we don't have the same problem again. That's gonna be all part of this project, if we get the go-ahead to do this. And then it turns into city-owned property right here along Barn Road. And to give you a reference point, it ends basically across from Capitola here.
Okay.
And then Pembroke School is here, okay? So it's not, I mean, really, this is Pembroke School, and this is all wooded down here.
Mhm.
But this is a piece of property that, you know, back in the 30s, went along with our parcel.
And this is city property?
This is city property,
Yes.
yes. Stanley Peck must have, who my dad bought the place from, must have sold this to the city.
Okay, this was, can I interject here?
Yes.
This was sold to the city 2 years after they put in the school, because there is a 24-inch water line that goes through here. And that's why the city suggested, there was a suggestion to the city to buy this property to protect this 24-inch line that goes through here. And this line goes down into here, and I guess it goes up into the school.
How big a piece is this?
It's a 2-acre parcel, it's 1.99. And what year did that happen, Mrs. Dyson?
I think it was in 1968.
Well, that, you know, that sounds right, because that's when Stanley sold my dad the parcel, and he built his house here. That's why it's shown, our property is shown on 2 separate parcels. And Stanley Peck used to originally encompass all this land that the Pembroke School was on as well. I have the field card if you need to see that.
I know, the other side of the field card, only on one side. And I believe, yeah, 1968, date of sale 9/5/1968, the city bought it. And it was because of the pipes that goes through here. I guess they had a deed, I guess they had a right-of-way, but then the city said, no, we should buy that land. I will tell you also, I understand, and I've been up there, and even after I walked with you, there are 2 streams that do go through it. Am I right,
Yes.
Antonio? There are 2 streams that do go through it. Okay. So I didn't know whether or not that would be a hindrance or, you know.
No, I mean, you know, unfortunately, over time, the streams have been let go, you know, and they really should be cleaned up as
They
well.
should.
And, you know, that all comes with lack of maintenance and,
Mhm.
you know, I mean, you can see that at one time was pasture, and now, you know, the stream at different times overflows and floods it.
Okay.
Those are real streams or just
Real
drainage?
streams.
Yeah, that's a pretty active stream.
Actually,
Is it
the-
drainage
the-
from
the
something?
the stream only touches on the corner of the property here because it goes under the road over to Capitola.
Okay.
So it really doesn't, it really doesn't affect what I'd be proposing to do, and I wouldn't be,
Mike, you can maybe show it on here, this is a little easier. I pulled this from this is 42 map 4212. You can clearly see it just comes along the property line. And here's the water easement that Mrs. Basso was talking about,
right.
24-inch water line. It's within a 50-foot easement.
So
So-
it's close to the road.
So
Very
it's
close,
close to the
yeah.
road and close to the edge of the property line. So it wouldn't be anything that we'd even have to interrupt other than fix it so it doesn't overflow, you know, if that was necessary and cause any flooding. But other than that, it's just basically raw land that has been let go and unmaintained. And, you know, I feel that we could make a big improvement here and really make it a showpiece and something that we could, the city and Alice Farm Market could be proud of and
Yeah.
kind of showcase what we do and, you know, showcase that the city is concerned about their property.
Through the chair. I live up Barnum Road, and I've gone by the corner a million times, and I know this piece of property, and it's all grown over, and it really, I know that he would make it look beautiful. It would really be nice.
Antonio,
It
let
would
me
look
hear your,
beautiful.
okay, let me hear your,
Yeah, I know the piece of property well. You know, I have no objection. I saw what Mr. Hallis has done in the little island really improve that entire area, so.
She can go all the way up the street.
Yeah.
And then around the corner.
I have some other locations in Danbury where I hope, I was hoping you could volunteer some of the services, but it's probably not gonna happen, but
Well, that was, to say that, I mean, that was initially, when I proposed that to the city, I mean, that was what my intention was, is to initiate some other businesses to get involved, to try to
Yeah.
adopt the spot as, with other towns,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's widely done.
You went well above and beyond. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
So, the only thing I would be conscientious of should this be granted prior to any work being done out there, that I've been given an opportunity to clearly delineate where that water main is. So you know where it is, I know where it is. It is a pretty...
I can show you where it is.
Yeah, as long as you know, it is a high-pressure line, so it is a critical line. We would want to just make sure that you know and I know.
And I can appreciate that because, I did approach the city years ago to try to hook into it, and they had denied me because they said it was a high-pressure line, they didn't want any
Right.
spaghetti coming off it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I can appreciate the value of that, and, I respect it as far as that goes.
Yep.
Through the chair. John, do you have any questions?
Yes, Madam Chairman, to the Corporation Council, is there any ramifications here if we, I don't know, just how do you, we're not saying we're deeding it over to them, we're giving them permission to plant, so forth. Does that tie this piece of property up in any particular way in case the Public Works or the city has something goes on to this thing? Can we break this thing?
Well, I know you did ask.
Yeah, that's
your question, but
the legal question is what I'm getting at. Is there a legal binder in here in any way, or?
Well, let me answer this way, John. Through the chair, previously, we had a license agreement with
Right.
Mike
Right.
for that smaller piece. That was a license agreement terminated at will. It was a mutual benefit, it was a small piece of property. It depends on what vehicle is being asked for. If there's another license agreement, that's easily terminated. If we want to get out, if they want to get out, it's basically over. If it's a longer term arrangement, it sounds like it's some more serious business involved, use. This may better be a lease. And if it's a lease, that is an interest in land. Unlike the license, it has more requirements in terms of process.
Right.
And it's if you do have a lease, typically they're a little more difficult to get out of. You have to have certain protective clauses in there, you have to have insurance requirements, and other issues related to what a lease would normally have. And it requires, again, the council would have to follow the process of the Code of Ordinances, which is, the council could consider if someone else is interested in this. It could choose just one person. If the petitioner is the one that the council wants, you could just give it to the petitioner. So, anyway, short story, if it's a lease arrangement, it's an interest in land. We'd have to have clauses in there that would allow us to terminate, but it's harder with a lease.
If I continue, Madam Chairman, this is located like in sort of in a lowland, right?
Yes, it is.
Did it ever, you've been up there a lot more years, ever caused any flooding in there? Did they ever have flooding? Or?
No,
No?
not
It
percent.
sort of runs off?
It drains off, and,
But I'm getting at it, in case, something happens in there, the city would be responsible. They'd have to go in there and make their repairs or whatever, But having done all your work in there, it's gonna be kind of...
I understand that and I appreciate that. The one thing, backing up a little bit, is that I understand that other parcel was a license agreement. Now, this would certainly be a larger investment on my part, so I would opt for more protection as far as, I don't want to be told in 6 months from after completing the work that, we need to widen Barnum Road and, we're taking it over. That doesn't look like the plan because they really can only make Barnum Road so wide anyways, and it really wouldn't be beneficial. I mean, I have looked at that as well. But I am flexible as far as that goes, and whatever is gonna, appease both of us and we can live with. I mean, like I said, I would prefer a lease, but if it wasn't possible, and then if you went to a lease and you'd have to legally put it out to somebody else, and then I had the opportunity to lose it, Well, then I would, opt for the license agreement if that was, if that was the choice. I couldn't see that anybody else would, out of the same attributes, go after the piece of property other than, in spite of me. But, whatever's gonna work for the city.
Yeah. Just my last question to Tom. In your opinion, so you see this, in any way down the road would interfere in anything you might have in plans, or anything that happen up there? Even Mike just mentioned widen the road.
Yeah.
I mean, we know
is
that's
that a
always possible,
possibility,
but you know what?
Right there, so you'd have a
If anything in...
What's the reality of that?
Yeah.
The short answer is there's nothing on the books planned in the near future
Okay.
for any major public improvements that would really impact that property. The only thing that could possibly happen is if we ever had to replace that water main or upgrade it of any degree, then we would have to go in there and work within that easement area. Again, there's nothing on the books, there's nothing that's planned, but that would really be the only thing I could envision.
So the agreement would have to, depending on the fact that you should be able to get in there at any time you need to be.
Which, they used to, up until a few years ago, keep that easement clear.
Right.
And now, it's been several years now since, I've kept it clear, to be honest with you. But the easement is right on the property line. It's not even down really on this, down into this lower section that we're talking about. So it's not in an awkward position if I was to do, improvements on the property. That section is somewhat cleared, and you can see, if you look from Barnum Road, you can look clearly up and see where, because there's manholes along the way, there's manholes and for access to the pipe.
Well, does that line go straight through the property, or is it
Yeah, it goes right,
right in the middle of it?
yeah, it goes right through the
No
property.
chance of a building...
It comes right over here.
Yeah.
It comes right off of Barnum Road, right here, right along here. And there's a manhole right here.
John, you have a picture of it
Yeah,
on
that-
there.
That's all. I just want protection of Mike and protection of
Right.
the city, so that we don't get in some sort of an agreement where one or the other has to renege on this thing. I'm very aware of Mike's, that piece that he did here is beautiful. And that piece I wouldn't, I don't think anybody would.
Well, that was the other, at the time,
Yeah,
why the license agreement was because,
whatever it was, it still was a good deal.
well, no, but what I'm saying was
Yeah.
that why they didn't want to lease it to me or sell it to me was because there was talk about that the corner was
Yeah.
going to be,
Isn't that
the
a pump
arrangement was
house?
going to be changed.
Isn't there a pump house somewhere?
It's
Pump
across
house.
the street. It's across the street.
Pump house is right here.
Well, you might have been
This is-
over. I lived there.
Okay.
This is the,
Yeah.
the pump house is right here. This is the pump house.
That's my only concern, Madam Chairman, only for Mike's sake and for the city, that the agreement should state somewhere or other that be flexible for Mike and flexible for the city. Be able to get in there if we might do, somehow or other this agreement's gotta be flexible.
Through the chair. The corporation council, the difference between a licensing agreement and a lease agreement is what? A lease, still have the opportunity to go on the property if need be. The license agreement, would you need any kind of insurance in place or any kind of?
For a license agreement?
Yes.
You could, you certainly, I think the
A
previous.
hold harmless agreement because
You could do that in the license agreement as well as in the lease.
You
Lease
could do it in
is, it's
either.
almost automatic, yeah. License, you don't have to. Some of them don't because it
And
depends on
in the
the
license
activity.
agreement, if we, maybe put a stipulation that if we needed it, and license agreement, we can get it in and out of, right?
Yes.
Well, what I'm saying is, we could maybe put a stipulation of 6 months' notice, or,
Well, as I understand it, and again, I'm getting the sense of what's proposed tonight here. What it sounds like is that there might be an investment of time and resources in this property. That's
Right.
was different from before.
Mhm.
So with that kind of
There
investment.
was an investment there too.
But the scale of, fair enough,
You
but
know,
the
I
scale
mean-
of investment.
I mean, per
Right.
square foot, it's gonna be the same type of investment. You know, if we look at it that way.
Right,
I mean,
right.
we used quite a bit of that property, we brought in the property deal and did the plant draw, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I mean, I
I have to go, I should go see that. I didn't mean to suggest that you didn't invest in it, I'm just saying the scale of activity in a 2-acre parcel is probably somewhat more substantial than, you know.
Per square foot, we're talking about the same type of investment.
Right.
I mean, that's basically, although this one, the renovation is more substantial, yes.
And that gets back to your question that, in interests of Mike and his company, his business, he probably wants protection himself from the city being able to turn around and, as you get a license, just to be able to get out, and then be stuck, we have the stuff, you know, and then you start having an argument over, you know, we pulled the rug out, and so he doesn't have his land there, his business and all that.
So what's the best way of doing it,
Well,
licensing agreement or?
I don't know, I still don't know the particulars of what's gonna happen on that site, but I heard greenhouse or something like that. A lease is better with a larger scale operation like this. The city, there's precedent for this, the city has leases at the airport, for example. The city has leases in other property too. The city leases property to a private enterprise to do some kind of business. The city gets paid a rent amount or other consideration, and the lease arrangements for a certain number of years. But again, as I said before, that kind of process requires planning commission approval, maybe some EIC review, requires an examination of value, see what we should charge, if the council wants to charge. Council may choose to have a, you know, quid pro quo kind of thing, in either exchange, that's possible too.
So a license agreement would be better for both parties, a lease agreement.
Lease agreement would be better.
Right.
But a license.
Certainly better for them,
License
Yeah.
agreement would go faster.
much faster.
What's your recommendation?
Well, again, as I understand, I don't know the particulars of what would be on there. Clearing, I'm sorry, through the chair.
That's fine.
Clearing, right, and then development of some kind,
Planting,
bushes and
yes.
things like that, and then greenhouses, small houses, some kind of a stand.
Possibly, but initially what I'm looking at is to improve, you know, curb, you know, and make it, please,
See, if they were doing the same thing as on the previous piece, but on a larger scale, then a license could work. I'm just a little concerned that if you want to make it simple and do a license, if the city decides to change its mind, then we have an argument later.
Do you think a license approach would be a better approach initially and then propose a lease at a later date?
That's a possibility. It's a possibility. You know, once you start investing resources into the property, though, that's when it becomes a little more problematic, because again, a license is like no big deal. You know, if you leave, you know, I don't want to grow the vegetables anymore. Okay, fine. But when you've made an investment in the property, it's a little harder for you 6 months or a year hence into it to say, I don't care about my investment. I'll just remove it. You can certainly put that in the license, but you know, you have to be willing to say, all right, whatever investment I put into that 6 months or a year from now, the city tells me that's it, then you gotta go away quietly and you can't say anything. That could be put into a license agreement. But it's a big piece of property, so.
Would you prefer to lease it?
I'd like to buy it, but.
And the reason,
boy.
and the reason,
But,
I mean, now, and the thing of it is, the reason we can't sell it is because of that,
The
that's
water
why
line.
we bought it, because of that water line.
But couldn't it be a sale with an easement
No,
with that now?
no, because that's exactly why we bought it, because we had a right of way.
So you own all the property where there's water lines?
No, most of them, but the recommendation in 1968 was to buy it because of fact, because of the fact we've got the water main, and I guess they got it for, you know, pretty good, right, and so that agreement, because of that, it is a big and a very important water line that
That's
goes
it, I'm a
through.
Cherokee Indian, I'm looking for my land back.
Huh? What?
Put a casino on it.
What? I don't want to hear
Now I'm gonna
nothing
go to the
about
prison
Indians.
and
It'd
next.
be so far for you to go. Nobody
So,
wants to go. We're on tape.
I guess whatever, if we went for a lease agreement, there could be some opposition. I guess there could be some opposition anyways, right?
There's going to be opposition, Michael. When the chairman presents this to the council as a whole, there's going to be a lot of questions asked that the city has given 2-point-some-odd acres to a private developer to use at his discretion. There's going to be a lot of questions.
When did I become a developer?
It's the farmer,
When-
not a
Whatever,
developer.
whatever. If I use that
Big
incorrectly, I'm
difference.
sorry. But we are giving, say, for instance, it's too bad, Madam Chair, that we didn't get an on-site to take a look at this. Maybe we could have.
You did work there?
I haven't got an idea. I know where it is, but like Mike said, it's overgrown and all that. I
Yeah,
can't see.
very badly
I don't
overgrown.
really, I don't recall.
Lot of
But anyway,
damage.
there's certainly going to be some discussion on it, okay? I can almost tell you that. There's 21 people sitting out there, and 21 people have their own ideas on what the city should do and not do.
Right.
This committee certainly is favorable of any kind of a beautification request. Certainly, we are in favor of that. However, the technicalities that might be involved here could bring us to a point where the planning commission and so forth, they would say no deal. So I don't know.
Well,
That's why I'm saying.
We need to know what he would like to do at this
Yeah.
meeting.
In any case, if there's a lease, the council would need 14 votes to approve it, because it's a conveyance.
I'm
Yes.
sure.
Would it have to go to public hearing?
Yes.
And then-
It's a process, Mike, that
And then what about just a license agreement?
Well, that's up to the council. To me, I mean, I don't want to discourage that avenue. I mean, it's 2 acres of land. The council can certainly go that route. I'd just be concerned that with a more significant use of the land, a license agreement is useful for kind of simplicity. It's sort of like, you get into a small car, your gas saving is no problem. If you're carrying a family, if you're planning a long excursion, you don't want to drive in a small car. Similar to that, this is excursion. It's a greater use, presumably long-term use. So it's not really in the interest of the parties to be able to terminate quickly. And then again, that's yours to consider, but it seems to me the downside is more yours than the city's in that sense.
Right, but the thing is, if we were gonna go for the consideration of lease and then to have opposition, I guess I'd be willing to gamble, because I've had a good relationship with the city so far, and they haven't touched that property in the 40 years that I've been there myself personally, and, so, other than put the water line through. I mean, that's, and improvements on Barnum Road, doesn't look like it would, interfere with that either. So,
It's, for something like this, I mean, you can do it, but I would not favor a license in this case.
No?
And I say that frankly because it's just a big parcel of land. The use will be much more extensive than, even though per square foot similar, but the use of it would be much more extensive than a beautification piece, which is why a license was granted. I don't know of any other licenses. We have a handful of licenses, and they're all for, here's one before you now, for a restaurant, for the
Right.
sidewalk
Oh,
tables.
yeah, right.
Well, you do a license for that because people get tired of doing it, you take the tables in, it's simple. Concern would be that someone like yourself would be putting some investment forward, and then the city would just get up and get out,
But on our, if there's nothing, no loss on the city side, it would be our property, it would only be improved upon, so the city wouldn't be losing anything by doing a licensing agreement.
But the problem is, the license,
Especially if we have a hold harmless agreement or insurance clause.
it's just
in place.
typically not a vehicle you use for this kind of a large parcel, in my opinion. It's just not what you.
Steve,
In other words, I would not, if someone brought this to me, license would not pop into my head at all for this kind of use.
Really, not on our part, but on his.
For both sides.
Mhm.
I'm saying you could do it, if the council wants to come forward, but I think, I would legally, as a legal matter, I would not recommend that to you, probably. We could do it, but I would recommend.
How long do you think we should, be once a lease? What do you think
Well, if both parties want a long-term benefit of the use of this land, then the Council has been approving 10-year leases, 8-year leases, 10-year leases, maybe an option. Depends on, see, that's really what depends on what the folks here want to do and how long the city wants to tie up the property. But if you, let's say, do a 10-year lease, unless there's a breach of that lease, if something changes, then you know, it's 10 years. So then you got the commitment on both sides. But then at least you feel comfortable that you can make the investment in there. And the city can't just, you know, get up and say, you're out of there unless there's a breach of that lease. So, because you're both, you know.
Should we continue?
I don't know what to say yet. It's a difficult thing. Again, I'm sure the committee is in favor of the beautification part of it. But as far as the technical and other reasons why 2.5 acres of land, as long as the city is going to be leased out, I'm sure the opposition, other than this committee, so we better be prepared, whatever motion we make here.
Yeah, absolutely.
To, you know, be able to say,
Through the chair, I'm sorry.
go ahead, that's it. I'm just concerned about that
Open
part.
discussion, through the chair, to Corporation Council, would we have to, if we were considering a lease offer, wouldn't we have to know at this point in time, if we were to make a motion, what kind of a, financial arrangement would need to be made, or no?
It'd only be a recommendation.
It would only be a recommendation, but,
There are a number of steps you'd have to recommend after this committee has met. In other words, we need a survey and a legal description. We need pricing,
right.
evaluation.
So nothing could really be done today.
Unless, if you're recommending a license
If we were
agreement,
to continue this meeting, we could have that information at the next meeting.
Right, that's right. You can ask for the information.
That would
And
be
then
the best
continue the
bet,
meeting.
and then be able to bring it before the council.
Right. You could continue this meeting.
I'm here getting some sort of conclusion here tonight, to make a presentation on the floor to council. Somehow or other, just, the committee's certainly in favor of gentlemen coming in and wants to
Absolutely.
beautify a piece of city property. We're in favor of that,
Right.
unless somebody
So why don't
with
you...
more knowledge than I have is gonna say, wait a minute.
Instead of wasting everybody's money, the city's money, about surveying the property, why don't we present it first? Before,
Yeah.
as much as I would love to do something.
The time element.
It
of it.
doesn't
We
make
would
any
actually
sense.
do it with a license, and you're not in favor of that.
I don't think Michael's up to, or I don't think the House Farm is up to doing very much this year except start to clear it. Because in fact, there's an awful lot of undergrowth, awful lot of brush in there. So I mean, I don't think that even if we would know, because they're gonna wanna know, what are you gonna lease it for, how much, and the other people on the committee will probably wanna know, because we've got 21 people, and you've only asked that 3 here. And the nice thing about it is, like, if we do continue this, we can maybe have another meeting in a couple of weeks. We'll have all the questions answered, because of how much would the lease be, or how long do you want it?
I'm
Things
not
like that.
interested in paying anything, to be honest with you. If I'm gonna invest all this, I'm not interested in paying anything.
Okay.
And we don't need to continue at all. And, if that's the route it's gonna go, let's not waste everybody's time.
Yeah, well, see, that's why we were just
I'm
discussing.
certainly not, I thought originally, I'm genuine about this, and like I did with Barnum Road there, the corner,
Right, mhm.
I made an improvement.
Oh,
And
we
I think
know.
I made an improvement to the city.
And
I
very
approached
expensive.
Bear Mountain Reservation years ago to try to maintain that. That was my grandfather's old farm. Got shot down on that because it was too much red tape, and I tell you what, I've done that before, and I've been on the losing side of that. I'm willing to gamble with a lease agreement. I'm not looking to
A
make...
license, a license.
Well, no.
I'm willing to,
Oh.
with a license agreement, yes,
Right.
excuse me, yes,
Right.
you're right. With a
Well,
license
Michael,
agreement.
we might
but
be
I am
talking
not-
about $1 a year.
Well, that's fine.
No, no,
But
this
I'm-
is-
but
this is what I'm saying.
No, and
That's why I'm saying that
as
if
far
we-
as that's concerned, that's nominal.
Right,
But
But that's
as
what I'm
far as,
saying.
as far as a substantial rent payment,
no, that's why I'm
That's no
saying,
good- that's
that
not-
if we come up with what you would be putting into it, the money you would be putting into it, it's the same thing like if you
if I
rent a
sit
piece of
down
property
and
and
tell you
somebody's
how
gonna.
much I'm gonna put into it, I'm not gonna do it.
No,
because
no,
I-
you would,
you
we
know,
would
'cause
know.
I might as well sit
No,
home
no, we would know.
and beat my head against the wall.
Right, no, we would know,
you
but what I'm saying, Michael, is the
Because
fact
I
that.
don't wanna know what I
if somebody-
invested down
if
at
we-
the other property.
Oh, I know, there's an awful lot of money invested in it, but that was a licensing. Now, what happens is, if this is a lease that we give you like 10 years, that you can use this property for 10 years for $1 a year, but there's no money changes hands
Right,
because
no,
of
I
that, what you're
understand that,
doing.
right, I understand.
That would be fine.
But the thing is, soon, like you said, there's 14 or 21 different
Right.
personalities in there.
then
And
it's-
soon as that someone thinks that an individual party is gonna get a gain from this, and that's not what I'm about. And if anybody here thinks that, then they don't know what we're about, what Howard's
Right.
Farm Market is about. And if you wanna know what we're about, you gotta come and see us. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way, I
No,
mean that in
we
a
know.
genuine way. And, you know, we get up and
No, I
work
know,
hard
but
every day to
this
try
would
to
be-
that, you know, and we're looking out, not for our own benefit, you know,
Right.
we're looking out for, you know, our surroundings as well,
Exactly.
so.
And that's what I'm saying, I mean, we're talking about the Korean War, I mean, I know about the Korean War monument, a lot of people probably don't know about that. I know a lot that you've done for this town. But the nice thing about it is, that this is why I'm saying, if we're talking about a lease, I wanna know about a 10-year lease, if you want a 15-year lease, or you want a 10-year lease, to have the lease so that you have that property, and you know you're gonna have that property for 10 years, or 20 years, or 25 years, okay?
Well, like I said, you know, it's been sitting there vacant for 40 years,
Right.
the city's owned it. 39
Exactly.
years. With a license agreement, I'm almost, if it's gonna cut a lot of hassle and a lot of undertaking on the city's part as well as my part, you know, I'm not looking to cost the city any money here. That's not the approach that I'm trying to take
Right.
here. I'm trying to take a, you know, piece of property that's basically an eyesore as far as I'm concerned and as far as everybody else that drives
Right.
Barnum Road is concerned,
Exactly.
and beautify it
Exactly.
and continue, you know, and eventually when you guys sell the school, I'll buy the school back too,
Right.
you know? And
I
we'll do
think
the
we'll be
same
selling
thing.
the
And
school.
we'll do the same thing there. But,
No, but what I'm saying, Michael, is that when I'm talking about a lease, if I'm not talking about paying $100 a
right,
day.
right.
I'm
But I
talking
just
about
wanna
a
make
lease
myself
for-
clear
right,
also. We're not
exactly.
gonna waste each other's time.
Right.
If there's
But
gonna
they're
be.
gonna ask on the
If there's
console.
gonna need a substantial amount of money that's gonna have to be exchanged,
No.
I'm not interested in
No,
that.
but you know what, Mike, I know property, and I know what kind of energy's gotta go into this, I know what kind of money's gotta go into this. I saw how bad it is, and I mean, I looked at it and I said.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you remember our place 30 years ago either.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, it's on
I'm-
the 180. right.
I'm that old. 30 years ago? I remember 30 years ago, Colleen doesn't,
I
she was a
mean,
baby.
you know, it's, you know, it's evolved to what it
Absolutely,
is
it's
today.
gorgeous.
And it didn't happen overnight. and it's not-
Absolutely.
And that piece of property isn't gonna change
And
overnight
there's
either.
a lot of work that's been involved in there, and I know it. But this is why I'm saying, I mean, if you want us to continue this, if you want to continue
No,
this.
I'm up for recommendation on what you folks think I should do, because you do this.
Okay,
And I
then
try
we
not
turn
to.
it over to Corporation Counsel. Now we've got all the facts on the table, let's discuss things. Yeah, Antonia, what do you think?
Well, there's I think, a legal issue here, what, a process that suits both of you as far as legally binding you to what's gonna happen on this property. I've seen what Mike has done on the corner. I think he'll do a great job here. He's meticulous with his work. I don't think he's gonna get out there and run heavy equipment or endanger this pipe. So I'm very comfortable in that degree. I also know that if I ever needed to get into the property, I could probably drive up there and say, Mike, I need to get in here, do you mind? And you'd probably even help me get in there. So that's just my experience with Mike. We went to look at a screening plant that he owns because we're in the process of buying one. So I've always had a very good working relationship with him, and I don't see that ever changing. So that's really all I can add.
Through the chair to Corporation Counsel, a license agreement would be with Mike Hallis's farm. It wouldn't be, if Mike was to ever sell, it wouldn't be exchangeable, would it? It would terminate.
Which is fine.
Okay.
Which is fine. We don't have any intention of selling.
I didn't think so. Yeah. Now, what do you recommend?
Well, it sounds as though the committee wants to recommend that this property be used by Alice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, that's, so we got that. Question is what the vehicle is. If you recommend to the council, if you recommend a license to the council, you don't have the planning commission, you can certainly stipulate that the license would be for $1 and other consideration, similar to the other one. You still might want to do an engineering survey of the property, just to have something, to define the property. I mean, if people do know where it is, but
why would you want to waste that money on the taxpayer?
I can actually, quite honestly, do this in-house. It's such an easy piece of property, so I could eliminate the cost issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
I intended to mean it was through the engineering department, it wouldn't be
Right.
$1 out the door. But in either case, lease or license, it's a good idea just to do a survey so both parties have a certainty about the property. If you do a lease, then, you can do it for $1 in the same way, another consideration. My only concern with the lease, license, as I say, is that for a property of this size, you typically will not find licenses for that. So if you present it to the council, the council may have some questions.
How does the airport?
There are no licenses there.
Oh, this lease, okay, I'm sorry.
So you might have some questions about that, and I'd advise the council the same way I advised you tonight, that it would not be our recommendation to do it by license because of the kind of conveyance this is. But if you can do either one. You've already expressed the value, $1.
Right.
You do a survey. If you do a lease, you have to get planning approval.
So a license you have to work?
A license would be simply you establish the consideration, the $1, whatever the value.
The lease has got to go through planning.
So if you wanted to go with a license, you'd simply recommend to the council to do that, subject to our preparation of the documents.
Michael, would that be agreeable with you to go with license rather than a lease? Or would you rather have a lease?
You want to start there and...
I think we should probably go with a license initially, and if, I think there's, any need to go with a lease, then we can get it back in there.
Absolutely.
But, maybe we start off with a license, and try that road. I'm pretty confident that the city doesn't have any plans, like Antonio said, in the near future, and I'm sure if they did propose something, that I'd have sufficient enough time to vacate and whatever else. And no harm done.
Or you're agreeable?
Agreement with the license.
First Corporation Council, through the chair of the Corporation Council, and in this license, when you say subject to preparation of documentation, would that include your whole commerce agreement?
It would be in the license. The license would be the document.
Do I have to state that in my motion?
You can, but we put it in there.
Well, sometimes,
Yeah,
sometimes they're not.
Correct. And you can specify, you can say a license agreement including hold harmless, indemnification, insurance, $1 value. It depends on if you want to reserve the right for the city to work on the size of the piece, in case there has to be some cleaning or work done there. We also include a clause that in the event the city terminates this, there's absolutely no claim on the part of, palaces. That might protect, in that case, that I would be worried about, which, a year in, you put some investment in there, you'd be upset that the city would,
I realize that,
Always put that in
but,
that.
that's with any piece of property that you lease or don't own, rent, or whatever. There's always that possibility that could happen, so.
but that's just so everybody's eyes are open, because things like that do happen. And, that's how litigation starts, where, somebody's upset that it's such a nice job, I did such a good job, I've got something going on over there, an investment in the property, you can't just take away that right. And that, I'm just saying that does happen. And
Right way, the wrong way, the government's right?
Well, what upsets me is that when somebody starts to clean up a piece of property, nobody wants it. As soon as that thing is gorgeous, then everybody wants it. And that's what upsets me, but that's why I'm saying, I want to protect Mike because of that, the money and the time and everything he's going to be putting into this. I feel what he's done on the corner, the time and energy he's put in that corner is absolutely gorgeous. And, it's just a beautiful job, and he keeps it that way.
But what you're telling me here is that even if somebody did propose that, they'd have to go through the same process, and obviously that
Right.
would go for approval,
Right.
so that really wouldn't worry me a whole lot.
Then it's okay, as long as you know, because you know yourself, as soon as something looks good,
No,
everybody wants it.
I understand, but,
Yeah. But you know that property will never be sold, right, so, I don't know why nobody could develop it. It's got it's got everything on there, so they can't be developed, so. It's great for your purpose, and to beautify that, and I have somebody down there in the camera who's saying he feels it's a great idea. But myself, Michael, I think the work that you have done, you have shown the love you have for this town.
Okay.
Nope. Any more questions? Kelly?
I would like to at this time make a motion to recommend at the next common council meeting, to recommend to them a license agreement to include a hold harmless agreement and indemnification clause, subject to preparation of documentation through corporation counsel.
Do we have
Anything else you want to add?
I can't promise I'll have the final agreement by the July 3rd date, because first of all, I'm not going to be there. My daughter's getting married that
that's right.
night,
Well,
so
we might have to-
I will
That's
not be
all right.
there. Neither will Rick Gottschalk, so
Mhm.
I'll talk to Bob Yaman,
Okay.
who's the corporation counsel, about that.
Chair, can we make it so simple? I think the activity of this committee would be to work on the proposal by Mr. Hallis to offer farming activity on some of the parcels. Can we indicate that this committee certainly is in favor of his idea to beautify this piece of property, pending something? You're giving all these adjectives there. I'm wondering if, let those people, the corporation people that are there, and Mike will be there at night, they're gonna swing questions on him, whether or not he's in favor or not. He can either tell them, yeah, I think that's a good idea, or screw you people, you're wasting my time. So, why are we,
No, I just thought that once we
yeah,
have,
why don't we just say that we're in favor of the beautification part of it? It's this proposal. This is the proposal that we're acting on. We're in favor of this proposal. Now, what else can we,
What he wants.
how can we get out of this?
But he wants a license agreement.
How can we get out of the license agreement?
No, I'm trying to get a motion to
We
get a
got a
transfer
motion.
from this committee to the floor, without getting too technical about it.
let's just be,
The committee is in favor of the
Wait,
proposal.
wait.
Now what?
We've got a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? I'll second it. Okay. Now we're having the discussion. Would you not want to have this motion, or do you just want to make a motion to approve the
The proposal.
licensing? No,
Proposal.
just the
Don't-
proposal.
no license,
But
no
we have
nothing.
no proposal. There is no proposal, John.
He's proposing, he wants to do some farming activity on
No,
a piece
that's
of,
not
on
what
a
he-
parcel of city-owned land.
All this says is that, all he says is that Michael has a proposal to offer farming activity
On a piece of,
on some parcels of city-owned land.
period,
Right.
period.
But this is the land that he wants to use, is this 2 acres. He would like a, I'm gonna get, I gotta go look at that, or otherwise I'm gonna get confused and say the wrong word. He wants a license agreement.
doesn't, he's not even what he's asking for, he just wants to,
He wants a license agreement to be able to use this land and beautify this land.
he's not asking for
What's he asking
this.
for?
Right here.
No, not on there, he's not asking, but tonight he's telling us that he would like to continue what he's doing on the corner, which is
Okay.
but he has a license agreement on the corner property. He has a license agreement on that
That's not
property.
what we're talking about, we're talking about this,
But we're talking about the
Blue
2
part.
acres
Yeah.
of property,
Yeah.
that he would like a license agreement, that he can beautify it. That's what he wants,
If we don't do that now, he'll have to come back again, won't he?
yes.
Well, you could approve it in concept, then you'd have to come back to the committee with
Right, you'd have to
particulars.
come
You
back.
have
Right,
to
yeah,
come
I'm in right
with
to
the
say
description of the use.
Well, we're saving a
you know,
step
of the-
by,
let's get the
I'm just
views of
trying-
the council before we go any further than that. to say that this committee
We're
recommends.
gonna get the views for the
But
whole
John,
board.
but John, you're getting, the act of this committee is to say what should be done, and that's to allow him to go and use this property.
It's just a
know.
suggestion.
It's just a
And then It'll
suggestion.
still have to go through.
And it has to go to there, either they can vote yes or they can vote no.
Colleen, what's your motion? Can I just hear?
My
sorry, Jack,
motion
can I
was
just
to
hear the
make a
again?
motion at the next, I'm sorry, to recommend to the common council at our next scheduled meeting, which we probably won't do then, but to make a motion to recommend at the next common council meeting, to recommend a license agreement to Hallis Farm, and also to include in the agreement a hold harmless agreement and an indemnification clause, subject to preparation of documentation through the common council.
To the corporation.
Corporation council, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's a little too much.
Maybe you put the concept of that.
Concept.
Because we'd have to frankly talk to the Hallises about the particulars of what they're gonna do. We don't really have anything right now, so that you'd be recommending the concept of a license for that property, which then we'll prepare the documents once we have all the information.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's fine.
So,
Just one last question on the motion.
All right.
Mike, what's your opinion on this? You heard the motion, do you agree to something of this nature?
You don't want my opinion.
Yeah, I do, because, we're recommending the approval of this proposal. Now, it's gonna go before the council with that motion. Now, you're gonna be here at the meeting, and they're gonna say, I'd like to ask Mr. Hallis a question, and you're gonna have to answer all these questions.
I'm glad I'm on this side, not on that side.
No, not really. I'm sure that
No, I mean, I'm not, I'll field whatever questions are thrown at me.
Sure.
I mean, whatever has to be
But
done.
you realize
has to be
this
done,
committee
but
can't-
I understand that.
we
Right,
can't
you
just-
can't disapprove it,
Right.
just because
Right.
I'm a good
Okay.
guy or whatever, right. No, no,
Okay.
that's fine.
All right.
I appreciate what you guys are
Okay.
doing, and,
We're gonna change the. Okay.
Now, read the
I'll try it
motion
again.
that you're going to accept, that we're going to,
I'd like to make a motion to recommend at our next common council meeting to recommend to the concept of a license agreement to include a hold harmless agreement and indemnification clause, subject to preparation of documents through the corporation council.
The beginning.
Did you say anything about the property? Where the property is?
Property on,
You might want to just add,
property on Barn
for 2 acres or 1.99 acres on,
Unless you could use that map, that's an official map that's recorded,
Yes.
map 4212.
but I mean, for the motion, just to put in the
Yes.
road. Is that what you mean? Take it
That
from there.
map accurately
the
shows.
concept of a license agreement for map 4212, subject to the preparation of documentation through corporation council.
Right.
I
Can you
leave
have that
out
motion
the-
again?
We can leave out the hold harmless agreement and
Yes,
that would be
because
something
that's
that
gonna be
you'll
put
put
in
in
there.
if you want
You
to,
you can say in accordance with,
in accordance with
with clauses as discussed by the committee.
Right.
I made the notes.
concept of a license agreement in accordance with
Clauses discussed by the committee.
in accordance with, what?
Clauses discussed by the committee.
Of course, you'll be asked about that on the floor.
Yes, and that's gonna be the
You-
whole
you-
harmless and the,
Right.
and the
By
insurance.
virtue of the level of
involved.
discussion here, you'll be at the meeting for a while.
You're not gonna be here on a Monday
My
night?
daughter's getting married that night.
On a Monday?
Tuesday night, it's a Tuesday night,
Oh, it's a Tuesday
the day
night.
before the 4th of July.
I'm coming.
Okay.
Okay, can I try this again?
Yep.
So we can get a second? Okay, I'd like to make a motion at our next common council meeting to recommend the concept of a license agreement in accordance with the clauses discussed by the committee, subject to preparation of documentation through the corporation council.
Identify the
On property, our map 4212, city-owned property consisting of 1.99 acres.
You need a second, I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Just, remarks on the motion, just to get it out of this committee, to get it on the floor where these guys can throw it around.
Exactly.
And they're gonna make a half a dozen recommendations that, are gonna make this.
Wait a minute, John. Now we're gonna have discussion on the committee, discussion on the motion. Go ahead,
That's what I'm
John.
doing.
Exactly.
Discussion on the motion. I'm just happy to, some indication there that the committee does approve of this, and I said it a couple of times, approve of the proposal to beautify this piece of property. That's where we're coming from.
Exactly.
The three-person
Exactly,
committee.
right.
Then we're dumping it on the councils to get the
Absolutely.
mechanism to be able to do it.
Absolutely. I understand, John.
Okay, that's fine.
Right, okay.
Fine. If that's the way it is, then fine with me.
Okay.
Why, I thought it would shorten it up.
Yeah.
Fine.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those not, I would like motion carried unanimously. I'd like a motion to adjourn.
Sure.
Seconded?
Yes, second.
Everybody in favor of adjourn? Aye. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, just to
Yes, sir.
explain to Mike the procedure from now on, it's going to be thrown on the council floor, and I'm sure that the Vice of Corporation Counsel, that you be here the night of the council meeting, that it's on the agenda.
Do not
Because they're going to be
go on the
asking
air.
questions,
But
you know.